Welcome back. You're watching the Arise News Hour from Abuja. Now, with just 2 days to go before the World Cup kicks off in Qatar, the host country has made a last-minute U-turn on the sale of beer in stadiums. Alcohol will now only be available for those in hospitality suites. It's the latest in a string of controversies surrounding the Middle East's first World Cup, and it comes as teams and fans from around the world descend on Qatar. They say organisers should reconsider the decision.
It's quite sad because, you know, with this weather and all the excitement we have, of course we want a beer at least once. But anyway, we can celebrate after. But on the other hand, I think it's a good way to avoid, I don't know, any kind of conflict or fight.
Well, let's bring in Arise international correspondent Faith Orr, who's in the Qatari capital, Doha. So the Men's Football World Cup kicks off in Qatar. Faith, a historic moment, the first time the tournament is being hosted in the Middle East, but is Qatar ready?
I think the simple answer to that, Charles, is yes. All of the stadiums are ready. There's been huge infrastructure projects over the past 12 years since the bid was announced that Qatar had won this World Cup. I mean, I've been coming and living here on and off for the past 3.5 years, and the difference in this city is just immeasurable even in that time. Not just have we seen all of these stadiums be completely built, including the one which is made of shipping containers, which will then be dismantled and sent to a different country for use. But we've seen expressways put in, highways put in, areas of Doha that didn't exist, for instance, Lusail, you know, that just simply wasn't there. And now it's like a mini city in itself attached to Doha. There are still some concerns that the city will struggle with it, of course, because although it's Qatar hosting the World Cup, it is effectively Doha hosting the World Cup. There are some stadiums out with the city, but really this is one city hosting the World Cup. It's not something that's ever been seen before. It's unlikely something ever to be seen again. So some of the concerns are the movement of people, the crowd control. You know, people are going to be on the metro, they're going to be packing into the streets, into Souk Waqif. Lots of people already out, big party atmospheres as the teams arrive. I actually have the Ghana team just across the street from me in the Hilton across there. All of the fans were there earlier welcoming them. So it's the people, the amount of people that is the concern. But otherwise, Qatar is ready for this World Cup.
But I mean, in a world in which there's so much talk about costs and so on at the moment, inflation and all the rest of it, very briefly, so we can get to other things, I wonder how expensive all this is.
It's very expensive, to be honest. I mean, even without the World Cup, this is an expensive city. You know, if you were to go to a restaurant and you were to have a main course with, say, a bottle of wine, 2 of you, that is going to set you back about $100 each. So it's a very expensive city. Rents, you know, are reflected in that. Transport costs are actually quite cheap, but the hotels are the big problems for fans. There's been a cruise ship brought in to try and give people the extra options. There's some camps available, but the hotels are pricey. We are looking at people spending thousands and thousands of dollars. I mean, just for instance, one car company is charging £3,000 for a car from the centre of Doha to the airport. So prices have gone up everywhere, including on alcohol.
Yeah, you mentioned alcohol there, so let's go to it, because there's a big issue over alcohol sales, a ban, in fact. I wonder how significant that is, because one of the sponsors is Budweiser, and I would imagine they expect their products to be sold.
Well, yes, indeed. I mean, Budweiser actually tweeted earlier saying, well, this is awkward. Now, this is something that actually, to people who have been watching Qatar and watching how they do things in the past, doesn't come as too much of a surprise. They did exactly the same ahead of the Arab Cup last year. There was supposed to be alcohol in the stadiums, and they made a U-turn at the last moment. There is still going to be alcohol available in fan zones at the FIFA Fan Festival. You know, we're seeing huge music events. One starts tomorrow night that we're going to see thousands and thousands of people attending. There is still going to be alcohol available in these areas, as well as in the bars within the hotels where they're always available. What fans won't be able to do is bring their alcohol in or buy it from a shop. There is only one store here and you need a license to get into it. Fans will not be able to access that. So alcohol options are going to be limited, particularly in areas like the Corniche and Souq Waqif, which are very traditional areas where there will be no alcohol whatsoever. And Qatar is saying that they're doing this to limit what they describe as hooliganism, which of course we do see sometimes in other football tournaments.
And Faith, I mean, there is also an issue, isn't there, about the way Qatar treats its many migrant workers. How is that issue being looked at?
So that there is, you know, I don't think even Qatar would deny that there is still an issue with migrant workers' rights. What they take issue with is the numbers that are being bandied around, that there's been, you know, 15,000 deaths or 7,000 deaths. Actually, those aren't accurate, but there is still an issue. There's been an issue with payments. There's been an issue with conditions of safety on the sites. Now, a lot of the safety on the sites is because actually managers are ignoring the country's regulations, but there has been deaths and injuries on the sites. That's, you know, that's a fact. But the regulations have been put in place, and Qatar says, well, actually, we have made these, you know, progress because there's been this international pressure, and the World Cup, they say, has been a change for good compared to if you look at Dubai or Saudi Arabia. I mean, Abu Dhabi is hosting the Grand Prix. Abu Dhabi's worker rights are worse than Qatar, but there isn't these calls to boycott these other events in the Middle East that we have seen with the calls to boycott the World Cup coming from Dutch fans. France isn't going to be screening things in public areas. But, you know, Qatar has made improvements. Yes, there have been issues, but they have gotten rid of exit permits so people can leave freely. They are punishing employers who aren't paying staff. You know, the changes are being made, but certainly this is a World Cup that has been built on migrant workers. You know, they have all came to this country, and they came here because the wages are high, especially in comparison. I mean, the wages are high here compared to the United Kingdom. So they're significantly higher than places like India and Pakistan and Bangladesh, where lots of these workers come from. But the conditions are still being worked on.
Faith, thanks very much indeed. Arise International correspondent Faith Orr talking to me there from the Qatari capital Doha, where the World Cup kicks off in 2 days' time.